I'm Tony Silberfeld. I'm the Director of Transatlantic Relations at the Bertelsmann Foundation, and I'm here today to talk about the state of democracy in the transatlantic community. So the thing that concerns me most about democratic backsliding is the fact that norms across the transatlantic environment and beyond have been changing. Steadily over the years, we've seen an erosion of what is considered acceptable and what is not considered acceptable. So whether it's political parties, ideas, anything that's in the public sphere, at one point used to be considered fringe and beyond the pale. Those exact same ideas today are considered acceptable. They're mainstream. We've got politicians in office espousing those views, and somehow the electorate is saying, well, that's okay. In 2022, it seems to be okay, and I find that extremely disturbing. Whether you look at the American case, you look at European cases, we can look at any corner of the world and see that trend, and I just find that extremely troubling and very difficult to reverse. So in terms of how the United States and the European Union are collaborating and working together when it comes to democracy promotion, it's a difficult question today because I'm not sure that it has a transatlantic solution. My own personal view is that if we can't get our own houses in order, it doesn't really matter what we do across the Atlantic. And so in the United States, we've got a ton of work to do. Each and every European country, anyone who's a member of the Transatlantic Alliance, has work to do to varying degrees. And so I think that once we're able to get our own domestic houses in order, then I think there's plenty of scope to be able to work together on a variety of issues, whether it be rule of law, whether it be combating corruption, whether it be disinformation and how best to tackle it. Those issues are out there and they cut across every country on earth. But I think in order for us to be in a position to accomplish anything together, first we've got to sort ourselves out. So I think President Biden's decision to exclude Hungary from the Summit of Democracies was the right one. If we decided that we were going to have a summit that featured democratic backsliding, then I think Hungary would be a great candidate for that particular conference. My problem is not so much that Hungary was excluded. I think that was right. I really have a greater objection to those who are still included. If you look at Brazil, if you look at Poland, you look at even India, which some would say are moving in a more authoritarian direction, certainly have autocratic tendencies under Prime Minister Modi, there's a case to be made for why certain countries were included and others were excluded. If you're going to have a summit for democracy, you ought to include democracies. I think that there are a couple of ways that we can better engage members who are backsliding in the transatlantic community. One is incentives, the other is disincentives. I think there are plenty of opportunities to lead by example, whether we're talking about the United States or other members. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of work to do, and if we're able to make those strides at home, we can actually serve as a credible example abroad when we're trying to make the case for strengthening democracy. When it comes to disincentives, I think there have to be real consequences, whether it's in the auspices of the European Union, whether it's under the auspices of NATO. I think there are plenty of ways where we can and should punish members who are moving in the wrong direction. We talk all the time about the importance of shared values. We talk about transatlantic values. I'm not sure I know what that means anymore. And when you start thinking about what it actually means and why it matters, it's really important that we go back to the core of what those terms mean and stand by them. It's not enough rhetorically. We actually have to do something about them, and if we're not, there ought to be consequences for that. One indicator from the SGI really resonated with me because I think it's at the core of what it means to have a strong democracy in the most basic terms, and that's about the right to vote. Voting rights is one of the indicators that jumps off the page when I read the report, and the importance of it in any democracy, whether we're talking about the United States or any of the other countries covered in the SGI. And I find it particularly disturbing when I look at voting rights in the United States, the score on the SGI, and then look at what it means in practice. You know, if you look up and down the states across the country, you see a huge amount of polarization when it comes to expanding and restricting voting rights in this country. There is no common standard that says every American should vote, and that's a good thing. To me, that's the most basic tenet in any democracy. In the US, there's a Brennan Center report that comes out every couple of months, and in the May report, it said that there were about 400 restrictive voting laws that have been introduced in state legislatures across the country, and 600 expansive pieces of legislation to expand voting rights in the United States. That to me is an indication of a real problem. When you've got this constant tug of war between expanding voting rights and restricting voting rights, it means that there is no common set of standards that should apply across the board. And to me, that's a fundamental flaw with what's happening in this country and why democracy has eroded to the point that it has. So when I think about the way that my own work intersects with the challenges that we currently face in democratic backsliding around the globe and in the transatlantic community, I find myself going to very dark places all the time. And I would think that when you spend years and years trying to diagnose the problems that exist in the democratic space, there's no other way to see it. We're going in the wrong direction. And so what I try to do in my own work is not just diagnose the problem. We've really now tried to pivot away from trying to assess what is cutting across all these different countries to trying to find solutions. Working with cities at the subnational level, working with state governments, and then working on an international basis to see if there are a set of recommendations and solutions that can actually move the needle at all. There are a lot of people out there doing good work in different areas of democratic practice, from civil society to government and beyond. It's trying to coalesce around ideas that are going to work and really change the minds of people who really are the driving force behind whether or not this experiment with democracy globally is going to succeed or fail.